the icon, the great Shaun. Let's go!
One.
All right, hey, you guys excited to have Shaun here?
Thank you.
I told you, this is a very energetic crowd. And Shaun, we appreciate you being here, and we're excited to have you guys. I got to tell you one thing up front. His energy is electrifying, so I hope you're ready to receive that energy while we're up here today. Hey, so let's get straight into this.
Yeah.
I've got a chance to get to know you a little bit more backstage, and let's go back. You mentioned something, and I actually read this, that you think not many people know that you were born with a condition that could have been really challenging and could, for many people would say, this kid's not going to be active, he's not going to do anything. Can you start a little bit with that?
Yeah, so it's wild. I mean, most people know me from my, hey, now, this is a good crowd. All right. So yeah, I mean, it's a somber note, but yeah, I was born with what's called tetralogy of Fallot. So I had 2 open heart surgeries to prevent the leaking of some of my valves. I was what you call a blue baby. I wasn't getting enough oxygen, and my parents are like, oh, this doesn't look good. So they brought me in, and they're like, look, your son's gonna have this procedure. He's gonna be very inactive. He's gonna be, maybe sluggish. And I was kind of the complete opposite. I was definitely that menace, redhead kid in your community, running around, chopping the rose bushes and getting in trouble. But yeah, a lot of that, I think put a bit of a fight in me from an early age. People were telling me, I couldn't do certain things, and I'm so thankful for my parents because they really let me find my own boundaries, which were a lot more than were kind of, set before me, when I was a baby. So I really got to find my way through it, and I was able to achieve a lot through that, which is pretty wild.
It's interesting, you just mentioned your parents helped you kind of define that boundary. Can you talk a little bit about that? What was their role in that? Were they just supporting you? Were they pouring belief in you? What did that look like? Did they?
Yeah. No, it's wild. I think about it now, and I'm like, I hope I can do what they did for me, if I have kids in the future, and just that support of, having a child in the hospital, and then I choose a sport like skateboarding or snowboarding. I'm like, I just want to fly through the air and do these things. And, at the time, the sport was pretty misunderstood. And a lot of people, we grew up in Southern California, and I grew up in so people surfed, people played soccer, it was an active community, but people didn't really fully understand snowboarding. So as far as they were concerned, we were risking our lives every weekend, and how could you let your cardiac kid do these crazy sports and all this stuff? And so, they really believed in me and just, saw that I truly loved the sport and just kind of let me go, which was pretty crazy at the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You look at, obviously, the journey you've had, the X Games, the Olympics, right? Just skateboarding, just that whole world in itself. You were kind of noticed early on.
Yeah.
Right? And there's talent there, there's potential there.
Yeah.
How did that transform with time? Because many of us, the potential could be there.
Yeah.
But how do you turn that into a commitment where it actually actualizes?
It turns
out into a real thing, and you're living, and then you become the Shaun White that you are today.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it was just right place, right time. I mean, I started skiing when I was probably 4. We took these little trips up to Big Bear Summit, the local mountains for us. And yes, it's so good. It's a fun place. And so I actually grew up riding there, and you know, we go one trip, and my brother's like, I'm gonna do this thing called snowboarding. And I was like, oh, what is, you know, he's 7 years older than me, I gotta do what he's doing. So I begged my parents to put me on a snowboard. And I thought they were just doing me a service. They're actually like, thank goodness, because I wasn't allowed poles. Ninja Turtles were a big deal in my world at the time, so I would hit my siblings and people, and so they're like, he's a terror on skis, we'll put him on a snowboard, and he'll be falling all the time. We'll keep track of him, and so obviously I figured it out pretty quickly. But that's how it all kind of started, and they didn't really make kids boards at the time, so my mom called Burton Snowboards, and I'm sure she hyped me up because I wasn't that great. I maybe had a couple days on the board. She's like, my son's amazing, you gotta get him on the program. And I heard you guys are coming out with the first ever kids snowboards. And so that was the perfect timing. And so I ended up getting sponsored by Burton when I was about 7 years old. And once that happened, yeah, so like, you know, once kind of the community that we lived in didn't really care too much, and you know, it didn't really seem to have this sort of future in it. But once somebody really believed in me, I went, oh, well, I have this sponsor supporting me, and people think that, you know, and it really gave me that kind of conduit to then like strive from, well, now I want to win the contest. And once I won one contest, it just built from there. But I always had this sort of want, you know, and then with that little ignition of the support and somebody believing in me, really, you know, push things over the edge.
So the environment had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
But then, what were those little wins like?
Yeah.
It was feeding you, or like, what were you telling yourself?
Yeah.
As you started recognizing, I could do this.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the point when it all changed. I was probably, went pro at 13, and I realized, you know, I could do the math of what my parents were making. You know, my mom was a waitress, and my dad worked in the city of San Clemente in the water department, and you know, I had this big major competition that I won. I was 15, I went to Japan, and you know, my mom convinced me they don't use forks, they only have chopsticks. I was in my room just like training, like getting ready for my trip. But anyways, I get all the way there. I wasn't one of the like premier invited riders, so I was, you know, I was just like a guest, you know, kind of the sub-in, and a lot of the guys got per diem to show up these things. It's Japan, they're in Tokyo having a good time, and you know, they went out, had some fun, it was noticeable, and the next day, they got together and were like, we should all just split the money. We don't want to ride, we're just gonna put on a demo. And I remember sitting there like, man, I like paid my way here, and there's this and that, and like doing the math and all this. I was like, I don't even know if that's gonna cover the trip to get out here. And secretively, I had this big trick I wanted to unveil and all these things going on. So I sat there, I was like, all right, I want to compete. I want to ride. And that was a big turning point for me because my world revolved around these other riders. You know, they're my heroes. And here I am, 15, like going against what they want. And it's not like they just go away. I see them on the next stop, like they're there. And I was like, no, I've worked so hard. It's like, even though the group is saying this, I believe this, and I have to stick with what I'm believing. I could just go with the flow, but I want to win. I want to succeed, and I'm practicing, training, doing all this stuff, and I'm at this point, this tipping point. And so I'm the only one that said, no, I want to compete. We ended up doing the event, and I won. It was $50,000 in a car. And dude, they paid me again. I was like, Mom, will they take us at home? So, you know, it was just a wild time, but that's when my eyes opened. I was like, wow, okay, this is more than just a hobby. And this is more than just, you know, something that's like fun for me to do. This is something I could really make a career out of. And while that's happening, simultaneously at home, people still don't get it. They're like, oh, you skiboard at the extreme games? You know, people just didn't get it, didn't understand it. So there's a beautiful point, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but where the mainstream media and you know, the Olympics and snowboarding collided, and I was at the tip of the spear when all that happened, and things just went nuts from there. But in those early stages, you get these wins, you get these things that come your way, and sticking true to what I was, about, and not kind of going with the herd, and finding my own path through it all really led me to a place of, security and realizing that this could be something rather than just fly-by-night sort of thing.
That's it. That's incredible. I'm just going to sidestep on this real quick. If anyone missed it, what I'm catching, Shaun, is in the early stage, you're in this world, you're in this mindset, you've got some friends that are there with you, paid all this way. They're deciding they want to cool it. You're saying, I want to compete. But then you've got this group back at home that goes, you're doing that snowboarding thing?
Totally.
Right? Yeah. Kind of sound like our business a little bit. Yeah. Right? It's like you're still doing that financial thing, right?
That thing.
Yeah, that thing. I'm glad to know what happened in your snowboarding career too, right? That snowboarding thing.
No, totally.
I want to just a couple experiences. I know you recently, I'm going to really fast forward, but then we'll come back on this just to have fun on it. Didn't you just carry the Olympic torch?
I did, yeah. I was asked to carry the torch in Paris.
Woo! That's a big deal.
I remember getting a phone call like, hey, would you run the torch tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Didn't really think about it because I was there to do this big announcement. I'm sure it's something we'll talk about, but the announcement. But I show up, they put me in the gear, and all of a sudden, once the Olympic outfit comes on, you start feeling that spirit. I was like, oh, and now I'm running the torch. It was incredible. I would be lying to say I didn't get incredibly emotional after it. It was such an honor, such a privilege, and to feel that Olympic spirit in that way is so cool. And I was honored. I was really honored.
Woo!
So it's funny how Instagram works, because I posted about it on my way home, and they're like, aren't you supposed to be running the torch right now? Like, the guy on the plane, like, I thought you were, okay. Anyway.
No, it has to be an experience in itself, right?
Yeah.
So, as we're on experiences, you've done a bunch of Olympics.
Yeah.
Right? What was the most pivotal Olympic that you competed in?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask you for what was like your funniest story in the Olympics that you've had.
Okay. You got to. The first Olympics, I think it really jumps out. Obviously, it was the first time you ever do something. It's so monumental. It just leaves that impression. And I remember I was about 15 years old. I was trying out for the 2002 Salt Lake Games, and I'm in first place. I need a first place finish to make the team, and there's one more rider to go, and I watched this guy come down and beat me by 0.3 of a point. 0.3 of a point. I was devastated. I was 15. I was crushed. And so, we'll talk about these patterns that happen in life, but from that came the repercussion, the cause and effect, and I was just so fired up for that next Olympics. I was 19 years old, and I was just on a mission. And I'd won every single contest leading into the Olympics. And I remember getting there, and I'm feeling myself, everything's going my way. I drop in for my first qualifying run, and I fall. I'm like, oh, it's all good, I'm so confident. It wasn't until I saw my brother, and he's just like, oh, what'd you do? You got one more chance to, and then it started to sink in, like, oh my God, what if I hit a snow chunk? Or what if there's a bird, or whatever, some freak thing that happens that causes me from doing well. And anyway, so I'm fighting for my life now at this point. I do the qualifying run. I get kind of reshuffled into the next pack of riders for finals, and I'm dropping in the middle, which was really special because I didn't have to wait till the end. I was warm. I was ready to go, and I knew my finals run better than I knew the qualifying run. I drop in. I have this incredible run. I get to the bottom. I'm holding back the celebration, but I'm feeling really good about things. I'm at the top of the half pipe, and they run in reverse order now, so I'm dropping in last with the first place finish from the first round. And I'm standing there, rider after rider's going. No one's beating my score. Somebody's falling. The next. Finally, the person before me drops in and they fall. I just won the Olympics. I'm at the top. My legs are shaking. And I'm like, okay, I gotta do one more run, And they call it the victory lap. So I drop in, I do some big airs, I spray the crowd with snow, and anyways, I get to the bottom, and I'll never forget this. They put your whole family in the front there, which is such an awesome thing that they do. But I come sliding up to the family, and everyone's crying. No one had really cried at a competition before this. You know when dad's crying, there's something happened. Dad's crying, I'm like, are you good, bro? Like, he's like, I just love you, man. And my mom hugged me, she's like, you did it, and she could see by my face, she's like, you don't get it, do you? You don't get it. And I was like, well, what? She's like, you just won the Olympics. You will forever be known as Shaun White, the Olympic gold medalist. That title will follow you the rest of your life. And so I was kind of known in the world of snowboarding. X Games was on its way up, and the Olympics, was really exploding at this point, and my world was never the same. I mean, I remember coming home, and it was just like, I had long red hair, it was pretty recognizable, but I couldn't walk through the airport without, someone would break into that slow clap from the movie. and I'm standing there at JFK what do? You just throw but it was incredible, and to get that kind of recognition for my sport was also a really big deal, because mind you, at this point, for the majority of my career, people didn't really care and said I was throwing my life away, and I'd done it, So that Olympics to me was just such a turning point for my life, my career, everything.
Wow. to go from being defeated,
right, and then the comeback,
and then the comeback, right? Because those setbacks really set you up for a good comeback. Mm-hmm. But I want to follow on that.
You wanted a funny story from the Olympics.
I'm gonna come to that real quick. But this is leading me to this question.
Yeah.
In that period, that you were quote unquote defeated, but then you're preparing for the next Olympic, the next comeback.
Yeah.
What was it? Was there a thought of like, I'm gonna quit? Yeah. Not for me? Or was it a thought of, dude, I'm coming and I'm like, what was going on there?
I think I was dealt a pretty big favor at that point, because at this point I'm trying to do tricks that people are doing. I wasn't inventing anything new. I was like, I just want to do what's happening, but just better than the next rider. Maybe a different grab, my own way of doing it. Maybe I go a little higher in the half pipe. And at that point, I was like, wow, it was just a coin toss that kept me from, and the guy that beat me ended up going to win the bronze. So I was in medal contention, and it was a coin toss that kind of kept me out of the race. And so I was like, okay, I have to win without a doubt. So instead of trying to do tricks that people were doing, I was like, I need to be here instead of. So with, it's not even a question. He won, that's it. And so I started training that way. Like, what's the trick that's going to separate me from everyone else? And that began my sort of, basically every season I try to separate myself from the pack, and either a different trick, the way I dress, the music we play, everything kind of came into that sort of thought process, and it really took me, far in my career.
You're thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
You're thinking beyond what you're seeing from everybody else.
Yeah, what are they not doing, And how can I be different? How can I stand out from the herd?
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, give us the funny story.
I gave him this story
before you shared it, so.
I gave him this story backstage because you watch the Olympics and you're like, these guys, they got it together, right? They're real professionals. I was like, it's a little more loose than you would think. So the morning of the Olympics is Korea, 2018 in Pyeongchang, and everybody's like, what did you eat the morning of? And I was like, if I have to recall, it was chocolate cake. It was my buddy's birthday, and he's like, dude, I made the cake. You're not gonna have a bite? I'm like, I gotta go compete. He's like, just have a bite. So anyways, I eat the cake. I go to the event. It's brutal outside. It's foggy weather and cold. And when the sky is the same color as the snow and it's overcast, and you start flipping, like it's really hard to tell where you are in the air. And so they draw these lines on the half pipe wall in like blue or orange dye so that you can kind of like an airplane, you start tracking these lines while you're flipping. Anyways, the day goes on, competition starts. I'm actually having a pretty horrible day at this point. Ask my coach at this time, who, mind you, fun fact, the guy that beat me in 2015 by 3/10 of a point, JJ Thomas, now is my coach at this Olympics, so that's full circle of life, I tell you. So a little tough love, now he's helping me out, and so we're at the Olympics with him, and he's just like, we're done. He's riding terribly, the weather's horrible, what are we gonna do? And I'm fiddling with my lenses, because you bring a bunch of different lenses, in case it's sunny, in case it's foggy, in case it's raining, you wanna change the lens so you can see what you're doing. And I finally lock in this lens. I'd been shuffling different ones. He's like, you gotta just pick one. So I pick the lens, we get to the top, contest starts, and I know something about myself where I don't fall a lot. And so I'm thinking to myself, perfect, like, when the time comes, I'm gonna put it down, because I've been falling all practice. So I was like, no, we're just gonna do it when it counts. And so I drop in and I lay down probably one of the best runs I'd ever done. I was so proud, I was so excited. I get to the bottom and your face is covered with the mask and the goggles. And at this point, every Olympics that I'd won with my first run. And I got the victory lap. That happened in Torino, then again in Vancouver, and here we go. I'm at this Olympics, and I put down this amazing run. The score comes in, I'm losing it, and I'm so pumped up. I like pull my helmet off and my goggles. I want air, and I throw my helmet. And I'm watching it go through the sky. I was like, that's my only helmet. And so I look at the camera guy, and I'm like, yo, like, I need that back. And he's like, so then the thing comes back, I get the helmet, thank goodness all the foam's still in there, it's intact, but the goggles, mind you, this finally got the lens I like, is in shambles, it's got snow all over it. And so I'm like, I don't have a backup, what do? I see a guy in the crowd, and I'm like, yo, like, I need your goggles. He gave me this like, puzzled look, like, what? And I was like, I need your goggles for America.
All right.
Yeah, he was like, let's go, you know? I could have asked for anything. I need that sandwich for America. You know, so fast forward, rider drops in, amazingly talented snowboarder named Ayu Morano. He beats my score by 1 point. At this point, I'm like, all right, they're gonna make me do this this run that I'd somewhat been dreading, somewhat knew that I had to do. Mind you, if you rewind it a little bit, I was training in New Zealand and I was learning this new trick and everything went wrong. I clipped the top of the half pipe, I landed at the bottom. Mind you, the wall itself is 22 feet tall, so I bounced all the way to the bottom, and unfortunately my face caught my fall. I had 62 stitches, I bit through my tongue, cut my forehead, split my whole lip open, and I had pulmonary contusion, so I had to sit in the hospital because I was grounded. I couldn't fly home with all the blood in my lungs. So I'm just like, from the best day to the worst day. And at this point, I'd made a promise to myself, like, all right, I'm gonna step back out in the snow, which is in some small way willing to let what happened to me happen again. It's a small calculation, or percentage, but it could happen. And I made a promise, I'll never do this trick again until the conditions are perfect, because I tried to force it and it wasn't right. And so qualifying for the Olympics happens every step of the way. These acts of God would have, like, we show up and a blizzard comes in, I can't train to learn the trick. We fly to Canada, the machine that cuts the half pipe broke, the part's back ordered. Get back on the plane, fly over to Mammoth, the blizzard comes in, the rain, all these things kept happening, and so fast forward, I'm at the Olympics, I was like, all right, well, it's now or never. So I hadn't done that run until I got to the Olympics, and talk to anybody about, wanting to practice a routine and really lock it in. And so there I am, I'm at the top of the half pipe, there's one more run to go. I'm the last rider to drop in, and I gotta do this run I've never done before with the trick that put me in the hospital. And I'm just like, okay, like, there's something I know about myself in those situations is things turn from I want to I have to. You know? And when you're able to change that seed of doubt of like, oh, this would be great if this happened, or I'm doing this to, I mean, Tony Robbins says, burn the life rounds. Like this is it. This is what we're doing. It really, I feel like, improves the odds of the outcome if you're fully committed. And so I remember taking a moment to think of all the horrible outcomes that could happen as I'm walking up to the start gate, and then this thought popped in my head. I was like, you can learn to live with second place, because that's what I was still in. And there's nothing to it. It's a medal. You medaled at the Olympics. It's amazing. But you don't have to. You could turn it around right now. And what if you just stuck this run and won it? And that thought just started spiraling. And then I'm sitting there at the top like, I hope they send me, like, you know, and you know, in life there's these things like, the jersey I was wearing was orange, which is the same colors as the banners running down the half-pipe wall. And there's a flag blowing, big U.S. flag blowing. Obviously, it's there to support the countries competing, you know, but the nations competing. But the flag's down because it's showing if it's windier now. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, the sun had kind of parted a little. I was like, I hope they send me. And they're like, all right, Ryder, ready. And I remember high-fiving JJ at the top, going, and I'm making my way through this run, and I'm feeling the first trick go through, and here it is, it's on the second wall. I throw this trick, I'm holding on for dear life, I come around, and there it is, I landed. And just like anybody that feels like a rally in a you know, ping pong, anything, you feel that second wind, that momentum shifting your way, and I'm like, I just gotta land this run. So I keep making my way through the half pipe. It's really funny, if you watch the footage, you can see, it's so cold out, you can see me having like a jump and then I breathe. So it's like a puff of air being released, and every hit there's a little exhale that I'm doing, except the last hit. He's holding his breath on that one, because I'm flipping and spinning through the air, and again, I'm looking for that blue line. And I remember coming around, landing that trick, and that was that. It was just one of the best times I'd ever done that run. First time I ever done that run.
So I'm not even the one doing it, and I have anxiety from it. Just the adrenaline of it, right?
Yeah, it was intense.
Going through that.
I kept checking the scoreboard, like, did I really do it? And then for after that, I kept having these nightmares that, like, the camera wasn't rolling, and they're like, dude, could you just do it again?
How much, Shaun, how much practice time?
Yeah.
Because how long's a run? An average run?
A run's about 5 to 6 hits in the half pipe, they call it, so jumps. But yeah, a minute, 2 minutes.
A minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 to 6 jumps, 5 to 6 hits. How much training is going in just for that 1 to 2 minutes?
Yeah. I mean, quite a bit. I mean, that's what's so wild about sports is you think about how much time and effort went into getting me to this place and this specific moment for maybe a couple hours for that competition. And that's going to set the tone for the next, you know, 4 years of my life, whether I'm going back to the next Olympics, win or lose, it all just kind of lands on this moment in time. So yeah, so much effort goes in behind the scenes to be, you know, locked and loaded and ready to go in that moment. You want to really build the training to get to that point, the tricks, everything, so you can peak at that specific moment. But yeah, it's pretty intense how it all boils down to this, you know, moment in time.
Does the preparation start like when you get back from that Olympics and go, all right, the next one, 4 years, let's go?
Mine's a little mixed. You know, I think the amazing part about competing for so long is you just learn what works for you. So I realized that, like, after that Olympics when I was 19, I went right back into snowboarding head on that next season, and it just, everything didn't have that glow, you know. The Olympics was such a big event and the world was watching. It was like, how does this little, you know, half-pipe contest at the local resort stack up to that? So I had a bit of trouble, and so I realized that I needed to take about a season after the Olympics off to just kind of like let the dust settle and then formulate the plan to get back to it. So at this point I knew, I was like, okay, I need to chill out, I need to have a moment for myself and then like fire it back up. But yeah, it's always kind of like an interesting thing, the way you learn what works for you and what doesn't. And the mistakes in life, they're real teachers. I mean, there's so many things to say about that. When you're making mistakes, and I'm coining this with somebody else, but so many people's problem is that they think they shouldn't have problems. The problems are there for you. You're going to solve this. You're going to grow as a person. You grow from the hard times, not the good times. And I know it sounds, like a bumper sticker or something, but you're really put to the test. So picture me in the hospital with my face split open, and the doctor comes in. He's like, "We've been on the call too long. You're gonna have to just hold the face overnight, and we'll come catch you. We'll stitch you up in the morning." And somebody steps in, and they're like, "Look at the bright side. You're gonna learn a lesson." I've been like, "Get at it," But there is something to be learned from that. There are lessons to be learned from so many of these things. Not making the Olympics when I was 15. I was injured early on when I was 16. 17 actually, I hurt my knee. All these little things in life kind of led back to, I was challenged, and then I learned or grew in some way, and then was able to succeed after that. So it's always an interesting thing to look, I guess hindsight, to look back in my career and realize that after every sort of tough time I had, through some path of growth, or gosh, if that would have never happened, then I would have never have been able to do this. So now when the problems kind of come my way, I'm so like, oh, okay, well, what is this new challenge, and what's this teaching me right now? What am I supposed to do that's different, or how can I pivot? What's going to help? And that's something that's really bled over into the business life that I've started for myself and other things. But yeah.
So it reminds me of something that Ed says, that things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Of course, yeah.
Right? And it's so true, but I think it takes a level of awareness, right? And control and self-reflection to be able to look at those situations like that and be like, all right, this is not the end of the world, right? And I'm going to get better out of this, and something's going to come good from this. So I'm really connected to that, which I hope all of us are really connected to that right there. Because that's the story of also entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm going to sidestep a little bit.
Yeah.
You're not just a champ at snowboarding, you killed it in skateboarding. Here comes this snowboarder with a totally different style in skateboarding. But I read this thing that when you were younger, you looked up to Tony Hawk, but you were intimidated or, reserved to kind of approach him. So you would do things that would catch his eye, and then how did that relationship eventually, I want you can share it, but what was his influence in that side of the career for you?
No, it's great. I mean, Tony Hawk, an amazing guy. I grew up in San Diego. No, I say San Diego, but it's more like Del Mar area. Anybody here? And so, and that's my people, and so, we would see Tony at the grocery store. So it wasn't, that big of a deal. But I was like, he's, it was like having a superhero land in your bonds, whatever. So I remember they opened up the Encinitas YMCA skate park, and Tony would skate there. And I remember seeing him, and again, at this point, I'm such a fan of him. He's such a big star, and I was just terrified to talk to him. So it's like, if I just skate really well, maybe he'll talk to me. And so he shows up, and I just start throwing down all my hardest tricks. And we joke about it now because the same thing happens now as an adult. He shows up, I'm like, oh, Dad's here. I gotta the Birdman's here. I gotta do it. Triggers something. But no, it was amazing. And so he came up, said hi to me, said, hey, I'm doing this big skateboard demo nearby. Would you like to join? I'm like, well, I gotta ask my mom. I'm like, okay. so he invites me to this thing, and I remember going to his house, and my mom would always make me do this stuff. She's like, all right, there it is. That's the house. Get out, go walk up to it. So I'm up there ringing the doorbell, and this big gate opens, and I go in the house, and this is the first time I'd ever seen a television in a car. It was the headrest had a TV screen in it, and he's like, yeah, you want to play PlayStation? as we're driving to the demo, big vert demo we were doing, and I'm like, for sure, oh my God, this is my dream. Hanging with Tony in his car, playing PlayStation. I remember picking up the controller and I was like, what is that? It was just covered in jelly. I was like, oh my God, this guy's a dad. You know, like, he's a full family man, you know, and it was really cool to see, you know, somebody that was such a big star in my eyes be humanized in that way. Like, oh, he's such a family man, he's such a great guy, and so at that point we were able to become friends. You know, I was able to kind of put everything aside, and it was just a beautiful relationship because he was going through everything that I was just about to go through. He landed his 900 at X Games, his video game came out, you know, but he still, through all the startup, you know, he stayed the same guy and really cared for his family and his fans and all this stuff. So he was really great to be, you know, around at that time to learn from him on how he was kind of conducting himself, family business, everything. And then when it happened to me, I was like, oh wow, I kind of had, you know, somebody to really learn from at that point. So.
Because, again, I want to relate it to our business.
Yeah.
You know, we come to an event like this, and there's all these stars sitting in the front, right, that are, let's say, the Tony Hawks in our business.
Yeah.
And you made it an intention, right, for him to notice you. And it's like, nobody picked you, you picked yourself, right? And then he identified Shaun, and then that relationship of, it wasn't just skateboarding.
Yeah.
You got to know the real Tony and see how he lives and family, and I, you know, see that side. And some of us feel like that with our mentors in the business, right? And that's how important that relationship is, because it's a lot more than just on our end on a business aspect or a skateboarding aspect.
And I was telling you backstage, one of the coolest things happened, and it's so cool to have somebody that's in your sphere to learn from and to you know, emulate their career and look toward their career. But I remember doing an interview with Tony, and the interviewer was like, so Tony, what do you think about Shaun being the next Tony Hawk? And he was just like, that sounds awful. And I remember being like, what? Like, I know what the interviewer was saying. Hey, what do you think about Shaun, you know, having the level of success that you've had? You know, but what he was saying to, obviously, the interviewer, but to me at the time was like, that sounds awful. You need to be Shaun White. You need to find your own path. Like, this is the cap that I've got now, and you need to find your own way. That really affected me. So, great guy.
Let's kind of, you mentioned something earlier on the Tony moment, but it's an era thing.
Yeah.
That there were opportunities in your era for you that there wasn't in his era. We'll kind of touch on that a little bit, like dive a little deeper in that.
No, it's wild when you follow Tony's career and kind of know what happened. I mean, skateboarding blew up, and then all of a sudden it was considered like a trend, and then it went out. It was like, you know, here today, gone tomorrow, and you know, he truly loved the sport and stuck with it until all of a sudden, boom, it blew up again, and he was Tony Hawk. You know, but for me, I feel like he was obviously the generation before that kind of opened the door to all these new opportunities. I mean, he was the first skateboarder or actual sports star to be, you know, a household name on television. It had a video game, like people knew Tony Hawk, and that was the first of its kind. And that really got people excited about sports and things, and so he kind of opened that door, and then I was able to take that to that next place. And you know, you talk about the Olympics and these things. I mean, skateboarding just made it in the Olympics. This will be its second appearance ever at the Paris Games. And so these young athletes that have been training their whole lives and wanting that recognition and wanting that world stage to perform on will finally have that. It's so special. It's so amazing. But yeah, I mean, Tony never really had that opportunity. So it's wild to see the generational change, and I'm so thrilled to see what's next for the youth coming behind me. You know, see where they take it. Yeah.
You seized an opportunity and a timing, right? And I was sharing with you backstage how very similar to your experience, and that is the same for us. Like, we had a major announcement made today, and at this event that you know, our co-founders and people that have been in the business for 25, 30 years, they didn't have the opportunity that all of us in here have now with the ownership and our stock program that we have. And I just asked that because I think we have to identify the moment we're in, right? Capture it, seize it, grab it, run with it. You definitely did that, and now you're helping the next generation do that.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, the rules change slightly, but it's still the same game, and you're moving pieces around, and I mean, I love that. And I think it's so interesting. I mean, when I started riding, the half pipes were dug by hand, and then they invented the machine that cuts the half pipe, and then that's grown from like a 6 foot to a 10 foot, 18 foot, 22 foot half pipe, and now it's just getting even bigger and crazier. People are training in Japan indoors. They have half pipes inside now. It's just, there's so much